Jesus said, no other sign, somebody say sign. No other sign will be given to this generation except the sign of the prophet Jonah, who was in the belly of the fish in the heart of the earth 3 days and 3 nights. In the same way, the Son of Man will be in the heart of the earth 3 days and 3 nights. That's the only sign this generation will receive, the generation he was in. So, how long did Jesus die and resurrect? 3 days and 3 nights. What was that? Being dead 3 days and 3 nights. What was that according to what I just told you? It was a sign. It was a sign. When we were driving to and back from Montana, how many signs, because I can see drivers all over this place, how many signs did you see along the road? A lot, right? When you saw the sign, welcome to Montana, or welcome to Wyoming, did you go to that sign and say, this is now Montana, I have arrived? Or did you understand that the sign is telling you that from here onwards, you will now begin to encounter Montana? You are not where you need to be, but this is a sign. The sign is not Montana. The sign is information about Montana. But when you arrived in Montana or Wyoming, for instance, the Wyoming sign, I can remember the Wyoming sign was so beautiful, right? How was Wyoming? Now, don't embarrass the people of Wyoming. How did Wyoming look like to you in comparison with their sign? 10 minutes of grass. Was it colorful? Was there any blue? The sign did not look like the state, because the sign is not the state. But why do they make that sign like that, even though at least that part of Wyoming was not the most beautiful? Because they're telling you Wyoming is beautiful. The sign is communicating something greater than itself. Hallelujah. So when Jesus dies, he says, when I die, it will be a sign. When I resurrect, it will be a sign of something greater than what I am doing here right now. How many days did Jesus die? How many days was he dead, rather? 3 days and 3 nights. Right? How many of his organs decayed, rotted, disintegrated? How many of his muscles came apart? How many of his cells flowed into the ground and joined the water cycle? How many of his cells? None. So Jesus remained intact physically. When Jesus rose up on the 3rd day, he had the same physical heart, he had the same physical lungs, he had the same physical brain, he had the same physical hands. In fact, he had the same hole on his side. He had holes in his hands. So he rose up just the way he died. Okay. The reason why we do not expect and do not believe in a physical future resurrection right now, where is Paul's body today? Paul. In a grave, right? Do you believe his body is in that grave? In other words, if you could find out where Paul was particularly buried, would you actually find his body in that grave? It's 2,000 years now. So even the bones you will not find. You will not find Peter's bones. Now, that's 2,000 years. What about Abraham's bones? We know where Abraham was buried, in the caves of Machpelah. Does Abraham's body, is it still existing somewhere in a cave? No. What happened to Abraham's body? What happened to Elisha's body? What happened to Ezekiel's body? What happened to all these people's bodies? They totally disintegrated, and their constituent cells went back into the ground, joined the water cycle, evaporated into the sky, and you've been drinking them. Every time you take a drink, you are drinking the sisters. It is true. It is true. That is the cycle of life. They fertilize the ground, which means if what the Bible was promising was a physical, biological resurrection, then what must happen in the supposed physical, biological resurrection of the future that Christians are waiting for? What must happen? Let's talk about it and this is where we're going to end. The next one I'm going to demonstrate the next time. So what must happen for a physical, biological resurrection of Abraham to happen? Let's talk just about Abraham. Abraham must be raised up physically, biologically, according to Christian tradition. What must happen? Number one, scientists, talk to me. The atoms would have to come together on a molecular level. What if some of those atoms are in you right now? So they have to be removed from you. So wherever the atoms and the cells and everything and the amino acids and the DNA that Abraham used to have must be, because we want the resurrection to be like Jesus is, right? So you must put together that physical body that Abraham used to have with all its scars and all its birthmarks. Now, is God able to do that? Absolutely, God is able to do that. But here is a question. If Abraham was to be raised like that, we are talking just about one man. If Abraham was to be raised like that, where atoms are being brought together and a whole new creation is being created in him, would his resurrection be like Jesus Christ? It would be utterly different. It would be utterly different. Therefore, when somebody claims we must be raised up physically because Jesus was raised up physically, then I must demand that you must remain intact. All your cells, all your organs, your brain matter must remain intact for the next couple thousand years, and Abraham's must remain intact for that resurrection to be like Jesus's. Therefore, we must admit that the proposed physical resurrection is utterly, entirely, completely something never seen in the Bible. Jesus never raised a person who had been dead more than 4 days. Not one. No one in the Bible ever resurrected having been dead more than 4 days throughout Genesis to Revelation. Therefore, the proposed physical resurrection is a new, novel thing that has never been seen by anyone. Make sense? So Jesus was not demonstrating a physical resurrection because Jesus Christ's body stayed intact. Every Christian dies and his body disintegrates and rots and his cells go back to the cycle of life. The proposed physical resurrection of the future would not answer that. Let me finish. Of course, we can develop that more, but let's go to number 3 so that we can finish this message. I said that the first reason was because that was not what was promised. And secondly, I've just demonstrated that that is not what Jesus Christ was demonstrating in his physical. And Jesus did rise physically from the dead. Now, let's go to the third reason. The third reason is the timing of the resurrection according to the Bible is demonstrably in our past. So it cannot be in our future. And we know that the past resurrection was not a physical resurrection, because there is no record of any biological resurrection from graves when the Bible said Jesus came back the second time. So for that, let's go to Daniel 12 real quick. Daniel chapter 12 real quick. Daniel 12. I'm going to prove this in less than 10 minutes. This is going to be a record for me. Are you in Daniel 12, verse 1? Okay, at that time shall arise Michael, the great prince who has charge of your people. Please note your people because it will be repeated a number of times. The context, the writer is Daniel. The people of Daniel are Israelites. At that time shall arise Michael, the great prince who has charge of your people, and there shall be a time of trouble such as has never been since there was a nation till that time. But at that time, your people shall be delivered, everyone whose name shall be found written in the book, and many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, continuing, shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. So, let's read